of the brave where the bullets don't lie. We fought for our freedom with guns by our side. Red, white, and blue, our southern pride. Raise the flag high, let freedom ring from the rolling mountains to the flatlands. We sing, no one can take our rights. Our Second Amendment will defend our land. With every bullet we stand. We were born in the USA, land of the free, with guns in our hands. We'll forever be Southern blood runs deep through our veins. We'll stand tall for America till the end of our days.
Well, hey there, I'm Sully, and as always, welcome into the Gun Club. Tonight, we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into the political shootings, and I will call them political shootings, that occurred back on June 14th of this year in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, I'm going to call them political because there's no other way to describe it, truthfully. These were assassinations and assassination attempts. I will say that political violence generally is absolutely disgusting. I abhor it in any way, shape, or form. There is no excuse for this type of behavior. Having looked through a bunch of this stuff and read a bunch of this stuff, this gentleman, I think, was somewhat delusional, and we'll get into some of the deep dive on that. And he decided to go out and do something abhorrently wrong. That's simple. But there's been a lot of content about this. A lot of people have talked about this as information has come out, and a lot of people have been covering it drip by drip. Every time there's a new little snippet of news out, they do another video on it. But they also, a lot of these people come to the same series of questions that they can't answer or don't understand, and I think I can put a little bit of a spin on that from a different side. And I wanted to cover this because not only, again, it's abhorrent, it's disgusting, I have no excuse, no tolerance whatsoever for this kind of action. Somebody who runs for election, serves their community, whether you agree or disagree with their politics, no place for violence, no place for personal attacks, etc., etc. That, to me is just ridiculous. So from that standpoint, I'm not sure where we go from here. Just got a note in that we are not apparently running live on YouTube right now. Not sure why. According to this, it said it was starting on YouTube. The person who sent me the info that we're not running on YouTube, if you let me know what happens or what changes, I'm going to try to check settings real quick while people file in. Otherwise, if we're not running on YouTube, get over to Rumble, because after all, Rumble is our primary home. It is a free speech platform, thanks to the wonderful work of Chris Pawlowski, so we can actually support that and support what goes on. Trying to see what's going on, if I can find anything with the YouTube content here. Let me see. I'm trying to... Okay, it says that it's live on mine. I don't know what's going on with it. Again, the person who's tipping me off to this, thank you so much. I don't know what's happening with YouTube. I never really do. Sometimes they just don't send out their notifications quite well. Sometimes, my content isn't really the type of thing that they're all into, so we can sort of wonder what's going on with them. I'm trying to see what I can find here with their streaming software. Is it changing? Is it getting any better that you see, or don't know. Okay, now it says we're on. Okay, we're definitely on Rumble. I know that because, after all, Rumble does support free speech very, very well. So now, I'm not going to be using this gentleman's proper name, or I don't intend to use this gentleman, the shooter's proper name. I may refer to him as the cockroach, the suspect, the idiot. I may refer to him as Vinny or Vince, even though that's not his first name. I don't want to give him the decency of knowing his first name, quite frankly. The cockroach works with me. From that standpoint, as we look at how things have shaped up, how things have come out about this, there's a lot of troubling stuff here. And again, I think this is a delusional, sick person. I think, again, when we get into him a little bit deeper, you'll see. Right now, unfortunately, he's still behind bars, and I think he'll be there for the remainder of his natural born life, and I am very much okay with that. This gentleman doesn't deserve to walk the streets among us. Whatever you feel about capital punishment or otherwise, okay. If not up for that, fine. Just leave him in a jail cell forever. I'll let him rot. That's fine. Personally, I think capital punishment kind of gives them an escape sometimes. I'm not morally against it for the cases in which it's deserved, but why let him out early? Why not just leave him there until the coroner comes and picks him up and takes him away at the ripe old age of whatever? So, okay. The incident in question jumped off at about 0200 in the morning, or 1:30 to 2 o'clock in the morning on June 14th of 2025. It started when he went to the residence of the Hoffmans. Now, Mr. Hoffman was a, politician. He was a member of the Minnesota State Senate, as I understand. And again, you sit there and you say, what is going on? This is ridiculous. He pounds on the door. He's got body armor on and a police uniform of some type with a vehicle that looks very similar to a police vehicle. And he's pounding on the door, claiming that he is the police. Okay, well, if someone's pounding on the door, claiming they're the police at dark 100, what do we do? Now, me personally, I've got cameras outside. I'm going to look on the cameras. I'm going to try to verify, validate, whatever. But Mr. Hoffman goes to the door. He opens the door a little bit, at which point he's answering the door, and the gentleman claims that he is a police officer. He says he's investigating a report of a shooting that occurred in their house, and he starts questioning Mr. Hoffman about any firearms or anything else. Well, Mr. Hoffman, being a fairly intelligent individual, realizes this guy's wearing a latex Hollywood mask. And he's like, you're not a cop. This is something weird. He starts to close the door. The gentleman forced his way in. He then announced that this is a robbery. He begins shooting, wounding both Mr. Hoffman and his wife, Yvette. Now, Yvette did dive to cover their daughter, who was home at the time. Mr. Hoffman was shot 9 times. Yvette was shot 8 times. Fortunately, both of them have survived. They were in critical condition. They've got a long road to recovery. But again, basically, dumps 18 rounds or 17 rounds into the 2 of them in the entryway of the house. The daughter was home again. Mother covered over the daughter. The man flees. The daughter calls 911. And law enforcement, of course, responds to this shooting. They get on scene, and they realize that this is possibly politically motivated based on who Mr. Hoffman is. At that point, goes out in the region, hey, we think this is political. If you've got any political people in your district, start checking on them. See what's going on. Where is this guy going? What's he doing? Now, as we talk about this, I want to point out a couple things. The gentleman did this with a standard Beretta 9mm. This was not an AR-15 or a big bad assault rifle. There were no suppressors or silencers or anything else. Quite frankly, to me, this is a standard, ordinary handgun. Basically about the same size as this little toy right here. I would show a real one because I've got something, but it's not important. The bottom line is, everything we've heard about, it's assault rifles, we need to do. This criminal act occurred by a madman with a simple handgun. There is not a gun control measure that would have prevented this, except maybe the red flag laws that Minnesota does have that nobody did anything with. So the red flag laws didn't work. Any kind of assault weapons ban wouldn't work. Waiting period wouldn't work because this guy had been planning this obviously for quite some time. So a 7 or 10 or 14-day waiting period wouldn't have done anything. What would have done something? Well, again, maybe someone red flagging him, but no one did. And the fact that no one knew what he was getting into, I kind of wonder, but okay. Now, when he flees the scene, he goes to the residence of two other elected officials, the first of which is Minnesota State Representative Kristen Boehner. Fortunately for her and her family, they were on vacation at the time. He was unable to make any contact with them. So he goes on from there to the home of Minnesota State Senator Ann Rest. Now, they've got documentation. He gets to Boehner's house at 0224. He gets to Ann Rest's house at 0236. So making pretty good time. He parks on the roadway down the block. Now, this is where it gets interesting. An officer is sent to check on State Senator Rest. Check on her house, make sure she's okay. Again, they're starting to send the dragnet out. Well, the officer pulls up next to this guy, the shooter, the cockroach, who's sitting down the block in an SUV that looks very much like a law enforcement SUV. Sees somebody in a uniform with body armor. She rolls down her window, tries to talk to him. He's looking down, doing something, and she figures, oh, well, he's just another officer that's been sent to help secure the area. She was sent to go to the house. She assumes, again, we know assumptions, but she assumes that this guy is possibly another officer who's sent to secure the perimeter, sent to keep watch on the house, make sure no suspicious cars come down the block. Waves to him, gives him the high sign. Down the road she goes. He turns around, drives away. Fortunately for Senator Rest, this officer may well have saved her life. The officer, had they been 30 minutes later, who knows how this could have played out. The only thing that stopped the bad guy with a gun is a what? Yeah, you all can tell me in the chat, good guy with a gun. Speaking of the chat, I want to say good morning. Mary, always nice to have you here. Yes, please. Like, comment, say hi, share the channel, share the videos out. If you haven't already, we're trying to grow this channel on both YouTube and Rumble, and sometimes it's kind of hard to do. Yeah, I know. Not remembering the scumbag's name. He's not worthy. He's just not worthy of me knowing his name, and I have it. I promise. So now, Vinny the Cockroach, I like that, Vinny the Cockroach, he goes onwards to the next politician's house. Now, he goes down and he gets to the Hortman residence, home of Melissa Hortman. Melissa is, again, very well-respected politician, Democrat politician. She had just recently cast a very big vote in an issue involving illegal immigrants and healthcare, and it was a very, big vote for her. She did not like what she had to do, but she believed it was the correct thing to do, even though it made her feel bad. Yes, I'll agree. We can refer to him as suspect number one. Or actually, he's not even number one. We're going to make him suspect number two. Yeah, because he's just a big steaming heap of pile number two. Anyway, they get to Hortman's residence about 3:30. Now, the PD are sent to this location, and again, likely a welfare check is what they're dispatched for. And again, I'm sort of trying to put their mindset into this a little bit. Because one of the big questions that we've had is, the police arrived on scene, saw this guy, and yet he was still able to carry out his heinous act. How? Well, that's where we're going to get into it here. Okay, you've got a unit, whether it's two officers in one-man units or one two-man unit, don't know. They arrive on scene. They see what appears to be a law enforcement vehicle of some type in the driveway with its warning lights on. They see this guy 3 to 10 feet from the front door of Miss Hortman's house. They get out of their car, and again, they see a person in uniform. They warning lights, a law enforcement type vehicle, black SUV, looked to be like an Explorer, something like that. Very common. Well, this gentleman ends up opening fire on these officers. They return fire. There's an exchange of gunfire in the front yard. At that point, he ends up forcing his way into the house and shoots Mr. Hortman first, followed by his wife, Melissa, who was the political figure. Now, the sad part about this, and I was asked to cover this because, again, we do the details here. Sadly, they also shot and killed their dog, or shot their dog, Gilbert, who later had to be put to sleep. A madman with a gun did something disgusting. With a handgun, by the way. Again, we have no ARs in this yet. No suppressors, no silencers. Silencers. Okay. Now, he enters the house, kills Melissa. The officers in the front yard, let's roll up from their perspective. They see this car, they see someone in uniform, they get out. You know, I've been on plenty of scenes like this. They're not thinking they're going to a threat. They're not perceiving him as a threat. What are they perceiving? Some other law enforcement officer. Everyone in the state is running around checking on politicians. So they're like, hey, we were sent here with you sent here. And they start taking incoming fire. Looking at the front of the house, pretty decent distance, about 75 yards off the roadway. Chances are these officers were in that kill zone of halfway up and halfway back. They get what? They take incoming fire. They're retreating to their car. I don't fault them for retreating to their car. They've got to get to cover or concealment as fast as they can and return fire. Get off the X. As they're retreating to cover or concealment, because again, nobody takes the job to be standing in the middle of someone's front yard 30 yards away from them and taking rounds. Well, at that point, he forces his way in the door. Well, as they move up, again, it's going to take them a little bit of time to move up. Chances are one officer is moving up while one officer is covering the door to make sure there aren't any more rounds coming out of it. This guy is in the house. He's shot. Again, there's been gunfire in the front yard. Mr. Hortman's opening the door. What the hell's going on in my yard? He and his wife are shot and tragically killed. The question I've heard from so many people is, well, if the police saw him before he shot them, why didn't they do something? He is 50 to 70 yards closer to the front door than they are. There is no cover or concealment to move up on at that point. Chances are one officer had to, again, cover while the other officer moves to a flank, do something. You're in a, again, fatal funnel. You can't charge the machine gun nest. This guy is dumping rounds at them. They're getting cover. They're trying to approach. By the time he's in the door, they're making entry to the house. They now have two significantly wounded human beings in front of them. Plus, of course, Gilbert the dog. Can't forget Gilbert. We will not on this channel. Much respect to Gilbert. You know what? They are trying to save those lives. The idiot gets away out the back door. Okay. Good, bad, ugly. If, and I'm going to go with the hypothetical, if the officers only got two on scene, if one had said, well, I'm going to cover the front, make sure he doesn't get out, you cover the back, and the Hortmans had bled to death inside the house, that wouldn't be good either. These officers are going to do what they can at that point to stabilize the wounded, if they can. Depending on how many wounds, whatever else. They're basically dealing with two critically wounded people in front of them. They're going to probably be working on them while trying to provide cover for the officer who's down on the ground working on them. So the question is, well, they pulled up before he even got a shot off. How did they let him do? They're not really letting him do this. He's got a head start on them. And we talk about this a lot in situational awareness classes and things like that, where the bad guy decides when it starts. You can look at some of the great books. Left of the Bang is one, which talks a lot about preparing for what's going to happen, because you never know when it jumps off. Your preparedness is all you've got. Bad guy's going to start it. You're playing catch-up ball. Think of it again. If you had a football game that one team was out on the field getting ready to kick off and the other team hadn't even come out of the huddle yet, yeah, that's how this works. They know when it's going to start. You don't. You've got to play catch-up. The officers, I don't fault them 1 second for not charging into a hell of bullets, because all we'd have is what? 2 dead officers in the front lawn, and he still would have made entry. These officers were able to make entry, try to render aid, and again, dealing with a situation that they perceived as they're putting their car in park as, there's another officer here. That's weird. If a police officer, every time they saw someone standing in the front yard, jumped out and drew their gun on them, it might be a little excessive. So again, how does this play out? There it is. Now, at this point, because he exits out the back door while the officers are providing medical aid to the victims, they're able to recover his SUV. Of interest to note, in his SUV were multiple long guns, including semi-automatic rifles, possibly even a couple of those big bad AR-15s. Note, he did not use one of those. He was using a handgun. But I thought those... You're kind of seeing where I'm going here. They also found large amounts of ammunition, several notebooks with approximately 50 to 70 names in them of other politicians. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree, Mary. You put it so well. Anyone who wants to question how they're doing need to come out and understand, you think you can do better? Really, take the test, folks. I've heard a lot of commentators and a lot of the talking heads, people like me doing this, who have not been on a hot scene. I've been on plenty of them. I mean, honestly, we've been on hot scenes where we've had law enforcement officers, taking rounds. We've had, hot scenes that I'm thinking one in particular, they're telling me on the rescue truck, stage away because we can't get in touch with the officer on his radio. And he's screaming shots fired. So, again, by the way, I didn't stage away, but, see where we're going. We deal with this the best we can. Again, you cannot play Monday morning quarterback. Well, they let them do this. It must be. No, they don't let anyone do anything. Trust me. They were taking incoming fire. You want to go provide care under fire? It's a fun class. So, yeah. So, in this car, they find semi-auto rifles. They find large amounts of ammunition, notebooks with, again, I've heard 50, 75 different names, with a hit list, with detailed notes about ways in and out of the house, where they live, how many people live in the house. Again, tell me this wasn't a very pre-planned event. What have we seen? Bad guys put more time into planning these events than good guys do in preventing them. Am I saying it could have been prevented? No. I have said on many, many occasions that you need to have a plan for your household. We talk about it a lot in, surviving a lethal force encounter class, having a game plan. So, at 3:30 in the morning, you hear someone pounding on your door screaming, police, police, police. I'm going to verify a lot on cameras. I'm not going anywhere near the door because apparently his first several shots were fired through the door. If anything, I'm going to find my place of refuge, my safe hole, and arm up. I'm not faulting Mr. Hortman or his wife Melissa at all. I'm saying we need to learn from things in the past to make ourselves safer today. If these are real police officers, chances are one will not kick down the door on their own. Now, if you got 6 or 7, chances are they're not imposters, especially if they're all uniformed on camera and you can see cruisers on the camera. Chances are those are not imposters. one lone person in a uniform kicking on a door at 3 o'clock in the morning, that should get your brain going. Get on the phone to 911. Say, hey, look, this is where I live. Is this a cop kicking my door? Is that real? No, it's not. Could it have possibly, save them? I don't know. And again, I'm not trying to fault them. I'm trying to learn as much as we can. So this guy is arrested after a 36-hour manhunt. Over 20 SWAT teams involved, helicopters, unmanned drones. He was found about 9 o'clock in the evening the next day in a field 1 mile or so from his family residence. He, at the time, was armed, but was taken into custody without incident. During the 36-hour manhunt, he did try to buy an e-bike and a car. At about 7 a.m. on the second day, he pulled a bunch of money out of his bank account. The man had a plan, but clearly not a very well thought out or formed one, so we can go with that. The suspect is a 57-year-old white male. He was found with body armor, mask, police uniform, again, 9mm Beretta. Hours after the shootings, he sent a text to the family, or his wife, stating, urging her to leave the house with the kids. Quote, words are not going to explain how sorry I am for this situation. There's going to be people coming to the house armed and trigger happy. So the cops are armed and trigger happy? Well, they're going to be heavily armed because you're dealing with a man who's just shot 4 people and Gilbert the dog. I made some choices. Let's see. They stop the wife's car. They find 2 guns in the car, $10,000 in cash, and passports for her and the children. There has been suspicion that they were possibly fleeing to Canada. Why, I don't know. There's no indication whatsoever, as of yet, that she is involved or aware of his antics. He also, being married with kids and living with his wife, he also rented a room in Minneapolis from 2 people. Apparently, their names were David and Ron. And this is the roommate we've seen out on TV saying, oh, he was clearly a Trump supporter. Maybe he was. I'm going to get into that whole side of it here in a minute. But he sends the text to the guy, I love you guys. I made some choices. You guys don't know anything about this. But I'm going to be gone for a while. Maybe dead shortly. So I just want to let you know I love you guys both and wish it hadn't gone this way. Well, with all due respect, Vinny the Cockroach, there was one person who could have made sure it didn't go this way. And guess what? That's the way it went, and you chose that. A mentally deranged individual made this choice. Now, again, the roommate's claiming he's a Trump supporter. He's very anti-abortion, but he also very off the rails on some other things. He's all over the place. Truthfully, I think one mistake that we make, unless there is a really written out manifesto that clearly states beliefs and everything else, we have to look at this shooter and a lot of the others as non-functional, non-compos mentis. They don't have a playbook, so to speak, or a thorough plan. I mean, think about it. He did his car up like a law enforcement vehicle, and it may be because he supposedly owned a security business, 2 of them, one in Minnesota and one in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Called it Red Lion Security. However, he also worked as a manager at 7-Eleven. Really diverse background here. He's, managing the 7-Eleven, doing international studies in security. I know there's the instinct to come out and say, well, he wasn't on our team. He was on their team. We're going to blame them for it. A lot of times you can't find anyone, and I will say anyone, who shares this man's beliefs. This is a mentally deranged individual. And I want to go back and draw the greatest historical analogy I could come up with. John Hinckley Jr. If you're not familiar, back in March of, I believe it was 81, he shot trying to kill President Ronald Reagan. Why? Well, because he was obsessed with teenage actress Jodie Foster and the sex trafficked girl she played on the movie Taxi Driver. He decided that he could shoot President Reagan and thus get fame, and Jodie would fall in love with him. Because, yeah, chicks always want people who assassinate presidents. It's not which side of the aisle John Hinckley Jr. is on. It's not how he's registered to vote or how he voted in the last election. It's mentally messed up as a football bat, folks. This is, I think, where we need to sit and quit trying to place blame. There's been more talk about how he did this or did that or believed in this or voted for that than there is on, let's look at what we can do to deal with mental illness, because there's a lot of it in here. Yes, Mary, and this is where we're going to really get into some deep stuff. He has no problem with killing people or the dog. He has, preached in African churches. Okay. He wants to do mission trips, do things. Great. He tried to start a church or a religious group called Revo Formation. I believe it was Revo Formation. Their website's gone now. It's been scrubbed. It's defunct. But again, we can't sit there and say, well, this is clearly because of this political ideology. No, this is a mentally disturbed person, much like John Hinckley. John Hinckley did not shoot Reagan and Press Secretary Jim Brady because of politics. He went after him because he's knuckin' futz. Knuckin' futz is legit in these situations. Now, which side of the rhetoric pushed them over the edge or why they're knuckin' futz, we can deal with all that. But everybody's been more intense about trying to blame people as opposed to let's tune down the rhetoric. Let's stop this stuff. There's a case going on right now down in Frisco, Texas. I'm sure you all have heard about it regarding Carmelo Anthony. And one of the journalists, an independent journalist, brilliant lady who's been covering it, has got Carmelo Anthony's supporters. She's just putting out news, putting out arrest reports. She really doesn't editorialize it much or really share her opinion. She's just telling truth. She and her children have been threatened. That's not a civilized society that does that. That's not a civilized person who does that. If you're one of the people who's like spamming Sarah with all the BS or sending all the nasty text messages or whatever else, and you think this is right or you think this is how you get justice, you're defective. Go take a look in the mirror and tune it down. A journalist should be able to cover a story, any story that's newsworthy, especially, without being attacked personally. She's not personally attacking Carmelo Anthony. She's not out there writing disgusting things about him like, this is why we need to do blah, blah, blah to persons of color. No. She's covering the arrest report. She's coming out with statements from the media. What are we doing? A journalist can't cover a story without being threatened. Yeah. When the country started, we had the First Amendment, freedom of the press. We were worried that the government would censor the press. No, now we've got certain political factions trying to censor them. This doesn't work out well. The continued escalation, an eye for an eye, is going to leave the whole world blind. For example, if I cover this and someone disagrees with my opinion, they are welcome. Please post something in the comments that I missed something. If somebody says, I don't like your work, I'm not going to watch your channel. Hey, okay, I'll live with that. But if you're going to threaten my life, if you're going to threaten the life of my children, which don't really have any, so kind of hard. I mean, I've got a couple that I've adopted along the way, but, if you're going to sit there and threaten someone for this guy, again, mentally deranged. He, again, had a security company in Minnesota. It was like Praetorian Guard. His wife filed the LLC to create it in Minneapolis. He was the only employee. They didn't have an office. They didn't have any contracts that we can find. Nobody used them. Maybe it was just an upstart thing and he was gung-ho to try to get it going. Okay. He supposedly, again, worked for Red Lion Security that he owned in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Okay. He preached overseas at various African churches. Okay. And he was the manager of 7-Eleven. Folks, I think in some ways he was having delusions of grandeur. Now, a lot of people said he was impersonating police because of his car. Maybe. Or maybe it was the car they got for this Praetorian Guard. I don't know. How about his uniform? Was it an actual law enforcement uniform and shield, or was it a similar enough to law enforcement? Now, interesting to say that in the first breaking and entering, the 3 people survived, the husband, wife, and the daughter. They said, yes, he identified himself as police. So that's definitely impersonation. But the car and everything else may be a little bit explainable. Now, per Minnesota Africans United, they had a resume for him where he had a doctoral degree in advancement of learning. He had previously served on the Minnesota Governor's Workforce Development Panel, actually appointed there by Tim Walz, who, interestingly enough, Tim Walz, I think, was one of the people on the list. I know Ilhan Omar was, as well as several other high-ranking Minnesota politicians. Okay. You've worked on a governor's committee, and now you're talking about this. Again, there's no solid through line of this. There's no, well, he was clearly a right-wing MAGA dude. Yeah. Well, he gets the anti-abortion stuff right, but respect for law enforcement, doing what's right, no, not really. Shooting at the cops, not too many MAGA dudes are shooting at the cops. So, again, definitely a real piece of work in the big scope of things. We go through and we look at some of the stuff here. Currently, he's under federal charges. He's in the Shelburne County Jail. He's basically trying to paint himself as the victim in all this, of course. He's stating that they're being mean to him. They've got him in solitary confinement. At one of his hearings, he came out and said, and I quote, "Your Honor, I'm looking forward to court. I'm looking forward to the facts about the 14th coming out." I don't know if it's the 14th District, 14th Amendment, whatever. Yeah. He affirmed that he knowingly waived his rights to the full hearings and wants to go straight to trial because the truth will come out. Yeah, the truth will come out. You're knuckling futz, bro. Really, I mean, Mr. Cockroach, you want the truth to come out? You're disturbed. You're very disturbed. Next step is a grand jury indicting him, which should be coming in mid-July, could include additional charges. He then returned to court for the arraignment. The feds are looking at possibly putting this up as a death penalty case, and I'm not against that. It's not just a murder. It's, a political assassination, according to Thompson at the U.S. Attorney's Office. They want to try the case, and they want to run the case federally. Some of the things, it's crazy. And he talks about, here, I thought it was really interesting. Let's see, this was from his attorney, this is from the federal attorneys. Some of the things that are going on behind the scenes, in particular discussions about whether or not to seek the death penalty, that's going to be a choice here. I'm sure there's a lot of discussion about exactly what's going on within the walls of the DOJ. Yes, there is. This was a political assassination. It's disgusting. Y'all know, if y'all been on the channel for a while, I am no fan whatsoever of Timmy Walz, Tampon Tim. I think he's an idiot. I think he's a fool. I think, he's destroyed, a decent state. Definitely by letting Minneapolis burn back during the George Fentanyl riots. But as much as I think the man's a moron, I would never say that we should do anything whatsoever to him, to threaten him, enact any violence against him, his family, or anything else. Now, I'll mock him on Twitter, and a little mockery is always a good thing. Maybe it makes you rethink your position. But I would not threaten his children. I would not threaten him. That's disgusting, folks. And I believe some of this is the rhetoric, and I won't say which side's turning up the rhetoric. I think you all know. Over the weekend, this past weekend, we had a ICE facility get attacked down in Texas. We've had Border Patrol officers attacked, shots fired at them. Yeah. Sadly, it really rhymes with the firing on Fort Sumter back in the 1860s. But that's what I've got on this. Folks, I know it's a little short tonight. I appreciate y'all coming out. I wanted to at least highlight how, because everybody I've heard, how could the cops just let him do this? Folks, they rolled up on this. We're taking incoming fire while standing in the middle of a front yard. And we're able to basically advance on the position and make entry. Yes, he got out the back door. They worked to try to save lives. Life safety, property conservation, incident stabilization. Would I have liked if maybe they spent a little more time on the range and had been a little bit more successful in neutralizing him in the front yard? Yeah. I have an idea. Let's send them out and get them much more range time. I'm good with that. Because after all, under a crisis, you don't rise to the level. You default to your training. So get some range time. And remember, we're all Americans. We're living in the greatest country in the history of the world. You don't think we've got the greatest country in the history of the world? We have got one feature that you should really appreciate. Unlike Russia, unlike China, unlike the Ukraine or North Korea, unlike Venezuela, if you're an American, you're free to leave anytime you want if you don't like it here. Folks, be smart, be safe. That's all I've got for tonight. Bye. Check us out on Locals. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you go. I put a bunch of links down below here, and you can find out more information and support the channel if you want. You can always like, share our stuff. It's free. Follow our channels. Rumble rants are always appreciated, or you can throw something in PayPal. And if you want to find out more information about anything, hey, here's our channels. Please check it out. We'll see you in a couple days. We're going to be talking about the big, beautiful bill and what all it means for us in the 2A space. Good night.